Hello, and welcome to the Anomaly Project, the show that looks at all aspects of the paranormal and anomalous world. I'm Marcus Lowth, and joining me as he does every week is a legend that is Steve Mera. Now, Steve, tonight's show, we're going to be looking at a whole host of things, actually, from mass events to folklore. Should be a brilliant show.
Yeah,
How you doing, my friend?
I'm looking forward tonight because I'm interested in all these topics. Never just one. Just all things. Wonderful. I'm really looking forward to talking to Christian about this and finding out a bit more about his stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So, joining us this evening, I guess, is paranormal researcher and filmmaker KRISTIAN Lander. So, first of all, KRISTIAN, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm really good, my friend. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. No, it's a pleasure to have you on. We've got a lot to get through here. We're going to touch on folklore. We're going to touch on a mass event. But first of
Excellent.
all, because it's always a unique answer, I find. What dragged you into all this? What made you, what event? What case? What just kind of sparked something in your mind that thought, I really want to delve into this, as opposed to just being like an enthusiast?
Well, that's a good question actually. And it comes from many different aspects. I guess the key person in my life of the paranormal actually is my mother. My mother, I actually grew up, not a broken home as such. We spent a lot of time traveling, a lot of time getting around. And my mother had a collection of paranormal books that always on her shelf. There was like Charles Berlitz's, the Bermuda Triangle, that kind of
Really?
stuff. But she had a particular story that fascinated me from her childhood. So she said when she was 12 years old, she lived in a place called Turves, which is, if you know the UK, basically you have Norfolk on the eastern side of the country. It's that bit of that ear that sticks out. It's all flat fenland, grassland, and Turves is a small. It literally has 8 houses on a street in the middle of a village, middle of nowhere, and obviously on the fens. And she said that when she was living there, what happened is her father, my grandfather, had swapped houses. His wife had died, and he wanted to downsize his house. My grandfather now has 4 children and wants to upgrade his house. So they decided to do a mutual swap. They were in the army together. And over the course of a number of months, a number of phenomena started to happen in this particular house. Namely, the first one is it kind of began with a bedroom door opening at night, on a night where they first thought it was a power cut. My mum called out. She says, "Hey, mum, is that you?" No response. The door closed. The following night, a similar phenomenon happened, but this time an elderly lady walked in the room, walked around the bed, and she described it very vividly as this person had a pinafore dress on. She had grey hair, was tied up in a bun. She had red moccasin shoes on, with a pom-pom on top. And this apparent lady went around cleaning the cupboards, cleaning the dresser that she had, wiped down the locker, said it's okay, I'm just here to do the cleaning, and then left. And of course my mother then said to her parents the next day, "Who was the lady who came in last night?" And they said, my grandfather said was, "Don't talk wet, there's no one like this, no one in there at all." And then 3 days later, a similar phenomena happened where the lady came back in the bedroom. This time, she sat on the bed and then had a conversation with her, asking her how school is, how the world is, how life is, what she's getting up to, what is she like at school. And she then left a handprint on the mirror of my mother's dresser. And
Wow.
and she then found some jewelry on her dresser that was there and then was not there the following morning. So my mother, again at breakfast time, she's 12 years old, says, "Hey," and that lady came again, and there's a handprint on the mirror upstairs. So all the 3 brothers, parents all came in and put their hand against this, and it didn't match up. And she said very vividly about the moccasin shoes that she had. This old lady was very proud of them. They were brand new, and she said, She said, "I know now that it was someone who wasn't our family, but it was as vivid as anything I've ever seen in my life." And yeah, they're very true. The mystery then takes another bit of a change where Mr. Turner, whose house it formerly was, came over on a regular basis, about once a month. He's going to have dinner. He's on his own now. And my grandfather's telling my mother, "Hey, don't you tell him about what you've seen." And this guy, Mr. Turner, does ask, "Hey, are you okay? What have you been up to?" My mother kind of broke the glass and says, I saw a ghost in the bedroom. And when asked to describe what she looked like, he then says, he confirms that that's what his wife looked like. So That kind of story was, guess what sparked the imagination, really?
Of course it would do. It's not your average sort of apparitional type stuff. It's very physical, leaving marks behind on the mirror. You know, that's probably the pinnacle of all ghostly manifestations and apparitions, is the fact that the strangest ones tend to be when they're just like a normal person, like you or me, and the physical. And that really would really throw some problems in the works for some parapsychologists, because they think, oh well, it's all recorded and it's all something playing back and stuff. What about the physicality of it, having conversations? I mean, communication conversations. They really are profound, the most profound of all interactions with apparitions, them type of things.
Absolutely. And can I just jump in there, because I just want to ask you, and you kind of answered the first part of my question for me when you said this lady was the wife of the gentleman who had vacated the house. Did your parents or anyone in the house continue to see her, or was it just limited? Because it reminds me of an account when I was younger. On the day that my brother was born, my great grandma, who was German, passed away. You know, literally on the same night. When we brought my baby brother then back home, that first night in the house, I was sleeping in my mum's bed. His brother was obviously in the basket. And we both woke up and saw an old lady. And we saw her for 2 or 3 nights on the trot. And she was always like looking over the basket. And when I eventually asked who she was, when my mum said that's your great grandma, she recognised her immediately. And so we put it down to she wanted to see my brother because she'd not seen him. So do you think this was a temporary thing because he had vacated the house, or?
It's a good point. I mean, in my conversations with her, I couldn't quite grasp, or I can't remember how long this period of accounts happened. The one aspect that I didn't mention is that so the dresser that my mother now has in her bedroom actually was his wife's, and Mr. Turner basically had gifted her jewelry to my mother, and then my mother was then going saying, "Hey, my jewelry keeps disappearing." And what was happening is that Mr. Turner, when he would come back on the month basis, he would return the jewelry. So it was either apporting on when Mrs. Turner would arrive and take it with her, because like maybe she, as a spirit, perhaps wanted to make sure that he had the piece of jewelry. So often what it is that the intent of the reason why she was turning up, because the husband basically he'd gifted all the stuff that she, in life, had willed to him. And that's when, so it's that compelling thing where a ghost or a spirit has left something undone, or a will perhaps has not happened. And I get the impression it must have only lasted a few months, because there's not much beyond those stories of her telling me those initial encounters, and obviously Mr. Turner turning up on a monthly basis to give the jewelry back. So I believe it must have only happened for a couple of months or so. But yeah, profound story. So my mother told me that repeatedly as a child. So that kind of inspired me, and she started gathering books. Again, Charles Bullitt's Bermuda Triangle. Again, Eric Van Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. They were all in my mother's bookcase. For a very young age, I can remember being 8 years old, and my mother had ordered Reader's Digest had published this series of books called Mysteries of the Unexplained. Really big, large black books, heavy, dense, thick books. And, had Reader's Digest. They go all out with their research and silver pages, gold pages. And it was the first one was called Mystic Places. And within there, of course, was, accounts from Fort Lauderdale with the time slip event. There was abduction phenomena. There was there's that really large, what's it called? It's in South America. I was there was the NASCAR lines were in there. It's the sarcophagus lid that looks like a man riding a vehicle.
Well, yes, yeah.
That was like a 2-page gold picture, and I can remember how vivid that was. So that's when I was first introduced to concepts of Ancient Aliens and kind of the Hollow Earth theory, Lost City of Z. That's what introduced me to that. I can remember going to school at 8 years old with this book, and most people are sitting there, reading, maybe Rupert, and there's me with it.
So you certainly start from a young age. Obviously through your teenagers. Did you have any other encounters? Any strange, bizarre, even stuff that you just couldn't explain? And did that, if so, did that further, push you to want to investigate this stuff? Because there's always something that really shoves you, isn't there, really?
You know what? The answer is probably no. Nothing ever happened to me for quite some time. I was aware that people would bring stories to me. I almost became the one who people told their cases to. I was that person who people told their stories to. So I felt very much obliged to, record them. I put myself as someone who was interested in history, mythology, culture. I was very much a people-orientated guy, so I naturally became the story gatherer. In terms of my first experience, you should say I don't even know if it's paranormal. I can say that I brought my son to bed. I put him in his carry cot that we had at the time, and he's probably about 2 months old. And we woke up in the middle of the night, and my son, who of course he can't get out the carry cot, he's too small. We found him underneath the carry cot on the floor, laid out, chest down on a blanket, comfortable on teddies or whatever. But of course, my mother, she was in the next bedroom, and there's just me and the wife, the girl at the time. They don't know how the child got out of it. We don't know. But it was a house where strange things happened. It was a place where it's in Nottingham. It's in the north of Nottingham. It's like an area called Bulwell Hall. We think that there's a lot of iron ore or metal under the ground because lightning would strike the floor there on a very regular basis. Whenever there's a storm, lightning strikes actually would hit this mound, not far from where we lived. It was a place where we also saw. I saw what is referenced now to be ball lightning. I was coming through the living room into the kitchen, and my mother. There was two particular windows. There was a nice wide window and a small narrow window, and there was this ball of light that moved very, very slowly across. It kind of fizzed a bit. It had there wasn't any sound, but it looked like it was ovulating, shall we say? Yeah. My mum had these net curtains, so as it moved across from right to left, from my perspective, the shadows that were being cast into the kitchen and all around me were very vivid, looked very cool, and then it just dissipated. There was a large crash to the left-hand side, but went outside, couldn't see anything. But the following day, I went outside into the garden, and we had a large kind of creosote painted fence, and in a perfect circle, just by the gate here, all the creosote and all the paint had completely disappeared. So the creosote and all the paint was all in a perfect line in a circle where the paint was in this particular space where it wasn't. And within that, around the edge, the outline of that was burned.
Yeah, that's really weird. Very similar to my grandparents who said that they'd witnessed it, ball lightning, and it actually put a hole in their fence.
Oh, really?
They're only a bit bigger, a little bit bigger than, say, a golf ball, but it had actually a burnt hole in the actual fence. I mean, we know from, I remember years back in an Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, I think, there was an incident, I think it was in Yorkshire on the coastline, where a ball... See, there's obviously various versions of ball lightning, because this particular ball lightning literally came in, hit the cooker, big iron cooker, and burnt a hole in the cooker. Wow. That's how hot it was to burn the iron. But then you see about 1976, airliner coming into land during a storm, and this ball of lights fizzing and moving, moved down right down the aisle of the aircraft, and just moved out, and it didn't make a hole or anything. So some is kind of maybe physical, and some is plasma-like.
I think so too. I think there was two. I'm aware that you guys probably know. Is it what's his name? Patrick Jackson and the Sphere Network. Yes. Yeah, so he talks about the three, the spheres that appear to rotate and move around each other. Very fascinating. I think he's quite a credible guy. He clearly has done his research, and those kind of physical spheres, potentially might be the things that are passing through or physically causing damage and holes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the ball lightning thing is interesting, like I say, because there could be different variations of this. I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine, she's not a paranormal researcher or anything, she's just, she's not even interested in it. But she saw it in her garden, and she filmed it on her phone and put it on Facebook saying, does anyone know what this is? And if I can find that footage, I'll flash it over. And it kind of left like you were talking about, like a circle in the garden, but on the grass. And it looked very much like some of the sightings of orbs that are seen, in forests. It looked very much like sometimes the balls of light that you see in crop circles, which are often associated with them, whatever they might be. Yeah, so, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, what I'm getting to, you mentioned about the ground and the iron deposits. Do you think that's, because you would think that is something to do with paranormal phenomena? I mean, many researchers said it is, and particularly with the ball lightning. Do you think that plays a part in all of this, in saying what you were witnessing?
I do. And the reason I say it's metal under there, Again, it's just the amount of times that we saw lightning hit the ground in that area. So it's very conductive there. It is on a hill, so of course it's a higher elevation. I assume there's a connection happening. So I don't know whether it's iron or metal or whatever. I'm making that assumption. But the amount of times it's happened, I reached out to someone on Facebook not too long ago, actually, Sarah, and she lived on the same street as I did. And in my communications, I asked her that question: do you remember how bad the lightning was when we were growing up? And she's like, oh man, it was like every other week there was lightning would hit the ground outside the house.
Certainly magnetized that location. I think, of course, when a lightning strike hits the ground, it can retain magnification for a second strike. Could be a week or two later sometimes. It is interesting when you talk about those places, because it could be down to metals. Certainly could, because light, especially if it's magnetic, as well, because lightning is always looking for somewhere to hit, and you have to question, well, why is it hitting the ground? Because ground is at ground level. Why is it not hit? Because lightning tends to hit things which is its nearest to top of roofs, top of buildings, where the leader comes up off the off an aerial or something, and they make contact. But to strike the ground when there's other places around which you could
it's easier,
you think, well, maybe it's something to do with the ground.
Yes,
that's always been my thought. I mean, the orb phenomenon. I understand how cameras work. I understand how people for so long have misidentified orbs in the paranormal as photographs of dust. And so, completely get that. I'm a photographer in my spare time.
I still get that.
People see faces and all kinds of stuff in them. But I do think we use the same word to describe clearly 2 or 3 different phenomena, when we use it kind of blasé.
Yes,
Orb covers everything. An orb might be the lightning, it might be the vessel, it might be a sphere, and it might also be dust captured in a sunbeam.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so many of them, didn't they? So many different versions of them.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, speaking about the magnetic aspects of this, and this line leads me nicely into the Hollinwell Incident, which I believe you researched extensively. So I wonder, could you tell us and our viewers, what exactly was a Hollinwell Incident and what your research kind of turned up? Because I believe you've kind of connected this to paranormal phenomena, potentially.
No, I haven't, no. I'm aware of the case you're talking about. It's the Hollinwell Incident.
Right.
So the Hollinwell Incident happened in July 1980. Okay. It happened about 3 miles from my house, where I am now. So it's a case that happened July 5th. And it's generally known as the Hollinwell Incident. And the gentleman who took the photographs that are quite iconic now, there's a guy who's obviously walking with his daughter in his arms. There's a picture of all the ambulances, of course, are all lined up. And what the incident is, it's often known as the fall down field incident, where over the course of a day, more than 300 children collapsed. The press at the time kind of aimed it as saying it happened all at once. There's certainly situations where there was an apparent cover-up of some information. I mean, what's his guy? Bob Rickard, actually, from the 14 Times, he gathered every piece of evidence of clippings, news clippings at the time, and he basically is the guy who wrote the book on the case. But in terms of the evidence, what happened locally, so Neil Lancaster, he was the photographer. I mean, I spoke to him a few years ago, and also a few months ago, and he says to me, yeah, he remembers it well. He was there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the event really was. Do you know what jazzy bands are? Very weird term. Not many people have heard of it these days.
No, jazzy bands.
Jazzy bands. So basically, when the country had its operational coal mines, part of the requirement was to provide the families of those miners recreation and leisure activities. And one of those was jazzy bands. So it basically, regions of the mines effectively had dance troupes. They kind of wore like leotards, they wore hats, they had batons, they had pom-poms, they kind of did marches and so on. And this particular event, happening in Kirkby and Ashfield, was one of those gathering events where people came from all of the East Midlands, Leicester, Mansfield, as high up as Manchester, basically had congregated here for their annual festival, basically, on this particular field. There is what's misidentified about it. There is actually 2 events happening on the same field at the same time at opposite ends of the field. There's also the bottom end of the field along Diamond Avenue is it's a travellers' fair, and they've brought horses, they've brought carts, they're gathering at one end, and I think it's a consolidation of 2 events that are sort of the same, although they are officially separate. And all these jazzy bands, what happened from Neil's perspective was that people started collapsing from around 8 o'clock in the morning, and they continued to collapse until 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Not one singular event where everyone fell down. He describes it as they were happening throughout the day. The perception of the media over the course of 3 weeks is that it went from being, why are these children collapsing? Is it due to a fear at the time of nuclear waste? Is it chemicals? Is it, what else was there? Is it a UFO? Is it an underground VHF, very high frequency radio waves? Because there is a tower on that particular field. It was, is it poisoning? Is it from the ground? Is there fertilizer that's now poisoned the children? Well, what happened is, by about 11 o'clock, there was a call that went out over the tannoy that the ice cream is poisoned.
The ice cream is poisoned.
That was the call that went out over the tannoy. The ice cream is poisoned. Do not eat the ice cream. Also, a call went out to say that the water was poisoned. Unfortunately, this event was not well organised in the sense that they did not have access to fresh water. All there was one hose pipe that was being led from a farm, from a farmer's house on there, to where these guys were having this event, and there's a belief that the water was poisoned. Again, that went out over the tannoy. So the confusion of all the parents who have come to this particular venue is just like, what do we do? Children are collapsing. Neil's perspective is that what happened is that they were being frog marched. They've come in from lots of different places. Lots of them are already in costume. Their skin is too tight. They're wearing heavy fur hats. They've got batons on. They're being kind of drilled by drill instructors. And they were exhausted. And they were tired and they collapsed. But then that psychologically was affecting other people. They were then also collapsing. So the media at the time, the Sun, the Guardian, the Star, the Mera, their headlines, front pages, over the course of a number of weeks, was there was a cover-up. What's causing it? 300 children collapsed. 200 kids collapsed. Who went to the hospital? What was going on? Is the farmer to blame? Who's to blame? There was to jump forward, there was the solution that was arrived to. So there was 2 major press events. There was lots of people involved. The government got involved. The Queen's Medical Centre, Kingsmill Hospital got involved. All their regional experts as well all came to the decision. They couldn't actually work out what it was. There was a list of 15 things it could be again. So was it fertilizer? Was it poisoning? Was it underground nuclear waste kind of thing? Or every one of those was ticked off. They couldn't find the answer. So the answer of what they arrived to was it was mass hysteria that had caused the event. And this, I've seen the report myself, actually. I physically went to the Ashfield Public Library. The only copy that exists of this report is there. And I have physically held it, and I've read it through, and I've scanned it. It's really interesting because in that particular document, as Bob Rickard also found, is that there's actually references to 3 other events. One in Newcastle, one in Leicester, and I want to say Sunderland, where the same thing occurred, where multiple children collapsed in a small period of time in an event. And so he then went on to write a book about mysterious collapses all around the world, based on the fact that he clearly read the same document as I have. So was it mass hysteria that caused 300 children? I think it was 352 children, a bunch of adults, 2 police officers, allegedly 2 horses, a dog, 2 young babies to go to hospital or need to be treated by a veterinary, etc., etc. Then in 2003, there was a BBC documentary about this phenomena, and it was done by the BBC in collaboration with Notts Trent University. And what they discovered is that there was a chemical that was treated on the field at the time, and that product was called Tridomorph. And it's a chemical, and at the time in 1980 it wasn't banned, but by 2003 it was. And that basically irritated the throat. It made your larynx tighten up, it made your nostrils get a bit smaller, skin irritation, and that happened to have been found on this field. Although in 1980 it had been identified, but it was not a banned substance. But in 2003, by that time it had been. So the agreement was by then, this is what caused all those children to collapse. And then there was a guy called Andy Whitaker who works at BBC. He got in contact with me 2021, and I participated in a BBC Sounds documentary about this because he knew that I'd found the document, and we'd gone through that. Now, he wanted me to say that it was a paranormal event. He wanted me to say that it was, and I couldn't. I can't do. So the evidence points to me that mass hysteria was indeed a factor, and clearly Tridimorph was the issue. And he says, "Yeah, but you're a paranormal investigator. Don't you believe it's paranormal?" I went, "No, I followed the facts. I followed the data. The data gave me the evidence. Actually, it's not paranormal, but I can understand how people phrase it as such." And the media hype at the time that children have collapsed, 300 children, and the perception again is that it all happened at once.
Yeah.
But it's not the case. So when you look at the data and you stick with that, people are not always happy that the evidence that's being presented to them is what they want to hear.
True.
Can I just double check? I just want to clarify. When you said there was other events in Newcastle and Sunderland and Leicester, were they on the same day?
No, these are similar events. So I believe the ones in... without looking at the report, I believe at the ones in Sunderland, it was 50 children collapsed in the course of a morning. I believe the report that was included says that people were feeling quite lethargic at school, and then people started collapsing and laying down. And as that happened, more people started doing it. Even teachers just started laying down on the floor and just passing out. And the school nurse basically came in, shook one up, goes, "No, come on, let's go, let's carry on. Then everyone kind of rose up and carried on. And I believe the one in Leicester was much the same. Again, it's 150 children. I think it's 163, actually. Again, the same thing happened where one or two starts to collapse, maybe through exhaustion, maybe through exertion, maybe they're feeling a bit lethargic. And then that kind of becomes mentally contagious. Other people start yawning, start laying down, and they start nodding off. And then it appears to coalesce to other people. The mass hysteria starts happening. I'll see if I can. I'll pull it up and I'll send it to you.
Profound. Did you say that? Did you say it affected animals as well, or did it just?
Well, in the police government report of the Hollinwell Incident, it is said that there was 2 horses and a dog that was affected, but upon checking by a vet, that was found not to be the case.
Right. Okay. Because I'm just saying, if it's a psychological, hysteria, then the psychology of animals is completely different. So thus, I'm thinking, unless he's a very well trained horse, just thinks I'll just do the same, conform.
It's interesting stuff. And it reminds me of a case in America. It's a slightly different because I don't think you could kind of blame mass hysteria. You can maybe say subconscious hysteria, possibly, but where there were loads of children just started drawing the same strange figure, like right across the state, and they had no connection to each other. I think this was in like a short space of time. So it is interesting about how these kind of legends take on, and how they get a life of their own, really. But if you do find any documents on that one, please send them.
I've gone right here. I've brought it right up. So on July the 16th, the Asheville District Council issued their first press release to basically, in their identification, we have identified it might be a number of issues. Food poisoning, although all results of the tests are not yet come in. Food poisoning is definitely not the case. There was a fire nearby, so it could have been plastics factory caught fire, water supply. Samples have been taken from chemical and bacteriological tests. They are coming back negative, but further tests are to be conducted. Pesticide sprays. Police and health service executives of the agricultural inspectorate found no evidence of spraying in a particular area. The one regarding VHF sprays is kind of interesting. The VHF, it kind of the local community have a bit of the same kind of fear like they do with 5G and 6G now. What's it doing to us? And again, this is 1980, so it was suggested that radio waves were the cause. It does so happen there's a radio transmitter located not 100 yards from the site, but the aerial is only used by the East Midlands Gas Board and the RAC as a relay point. But the power levels involved are so low, below the maximum permitted levels, that previous users on the site have never been affected, and therefore this has been discounted. And it also mentions the UFO incident. So it mentions on this field that there was a UFO crash on this particular field, and the local community, again, are believing that this might be the reason why all these children have collapsed here. But again, it was discounted by the media, basically, and by the experts involved. But yeah, it's a phenomenal case. I want to see if I can bring up the other two um, cases that are quite similar. Yeah, there's like all the press statements here. Like the Daily Star ran with a story where it says Carnival Chaos cover up. The Guardian went children collapse cover up claim even in post mysterious illness more victims. Sheffield Telegraph jazz bands collapse on the day. Panic KO'd Gala kids hysteria. How can it be hysteria? There's a cover up. Poison cloud chaos causes 288 children to collapse. The Daily Mail reports 305 sick children with a poison cloud. So it reached mainstream attention. That's how major.
That's a lot of children. That's a lot of children to be adversely affected. Of course, one thing that out of all the things you said I haven't heard is the possibility of some form of experiment.
And you know what they're like?
They would do something like that, especially on young kids, especially in large groups. I'm aware that there's some tests very similar to this are taking place in the US, and adversely affected children. So, yeah, I mean, there is always that possibility, some type of test. I mean, look what they're talking about now, that they use sonic weapons and all sorts of things. It's been on the news all week,
Sure, it has.
But you know what? There was a time when these things were out. Nobody ever even knew of them. So suddenly you've got 400 or 500 people running down the street scared for some reason. They don't know why. You know what I mean? So there's always a possibility it could have been some type of experiment. I also heard in the US, and I don't know if you remember this, Marcus, but there was like in a park on a nice day, and just everybody just fell to the ground unconscious. Loads of ambulances turned up and they were fine, but they were just unconscious for over about an hour or so. Nobody knows why it happened. It was weird.
New one on me. I mean, I've heard of the Americans. It came to light through leaked documents that they were spraying certain areas, and they were, like with hallucinogens and seeing out things like that.
I mean, there's some good cases of this mass hysteria, but that's really one that tops the list for me. To be honest with you, that many children.
I think what's interesting about the mass hysteria thing is to jump in there. You're on about people suddenly feeling scared, and that can be brought around through, sonar weapons and all manner of weapons. I mean, but it's also something that shows up in the paranormal, and we kind of touched on this last week, Christian, when we were speaking about this. That is this something? And it sounds outlandish, and it is bizarrely speculative, admittedly, but could we be speaking about them tapping into paranormal phenomena and able to weaponize such phenomena to be able to actually invoke, fear and all manner of emotions? I mean, it is a real thing.
The CIA have been trying to do that for a long, long time. There's documented evidence of them trying to see if they can weaponize it, and if they do, then flipping it, that's...
Well, interesting enough, did you guys see the... obviously, what's happened with Maduro in Venezuela this past week? Well, one of the news pieces I saw was from Fox News, and it showed... computer graphic, CGI representation of the assault on Maduro's property and his compound, it said. And it demonstrated they had these helicopters up there, and they were projecting microwaves at the soldiers of the people who were there.
It just dropped to the floor.
They dropped to the floor, made the stomachs feel uncomfortable, their skin was boiling, that enabled basically a small strike team to go in there.
Like being microwaved.
Well, this goes back to the Gulf War, doesn't it? They were doing stuff like that then.
They have some crazy
widespread reported, but they were really using stuff back then discreetly against enemy soldiers. So again, that's just testament to the fact,
in the long run. In the long run, there isn't many dead, though, was there? There wasn't many people.
I mean, it's not designed to do that. It's to incapacitate. But that's just testament to the fact that what's kind of mainstream now and widely reported on really was being used 30 years ago. So it shows that they are 30, 40 years ahead of where they say. But I mean, it's a fascinating case. I mean, just looking at time, I think I also know, Christian, that you do a lot with folklore, you do a lot with legends, and I like the fact that you've said before, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially you're known for wanting to preserve these sort of legends of folklore. I think that's important, whether it's through filmmaking, through writing, or whatever. You particularly concentrate on Nottinghamshire, I believe.
Ultimately, it's where I live, so I guess. Yeah. I mean, I generally, I've discovered that I know the people personally who are the ones who are the folklore collectors, whether it be Tony Rotherham, who basically is he's the gatherer of all the notes of Robin Hood and so on. Yeah. We have a guy called Ezekiel Bone, who's a regional kind of historian who collects, folklore of local mythology. I know Dylan Knight, very good friend of mine, who is an actor and a performer who gathers all the accounts, as many as he can, in regards to where the boundary crosses between folklore, mythology, local ghost stories. They appear to coalesce with each other. So because of my connections with these people, I've kind of been, dabbling in those areas. And as such, I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, but what I find very fascinating with the supernatural cases. I'm very invested, just as you guys are, in the UAP topic and the poltergeist ghost encounters. But I'm very interested in where historically that might well be, through a different lens, are folklore cases, particularly fairy cases, reporting the same phenomena, but with a different cultural lens. So we certainly had fays who would come along, and the same kind of details, the beats are with the same, where the people who they meet, they take them away, they abduct them, they meet them, they show them other things, they show them foods, they show them different spaces, only to return them. Often the time dilation is also a part of that phenomena too. Sometimes it's 90 years later, and it's a case of, wait a minute, I've now forgotten the person who was a young person in my village is now an old person, and they are the only ones who remember me. That's an encounter that's one of them. So I find that, are we dealing with the same phenomenon, the same group that we give different labels to? Is it in fact the same phenomenon that is occurring? And my gut feeling says it probably is.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, the folklore legends are really interesting, aren't they? Because, like you say, this can go back centuries, right the way back to ancient writings, biblical accounts. I mean, the biblical accounts are really interesting, whether you're of a religious persuasion or not, because, as you say, they're speaking about not fairies, but angels, and they're really describing, like you say, the same thing, how they shine, things of that nature. So, I mean, I completely agree with you, and I'm sure Steve does as well, that we can find a lot of crossover, if you like, between mythology and folklore and modern paranormal encounters. I mean, I don't. Have you found that with your research into modern encounters, where you've kind of come across certain cases, certain hauntings, and thought, hang about, we've kind of seen this documented in folklore or legend or anything in particular?
Actually, yes. There was probably in my earlier paranormal days, should we say, I was invited to a case in Clifton, which is the southwest corner of Nottinghamshire. There was a house that claimed that their child had reported. Their child's only about 4 to 5 years old, but felt very uncomfortable in the house, very uncomfortable in the bedroom, did not know what was there, and they claimed that they had invited a medium into the house, and then this medium had told them there's a portal in the bedroom. Doesn't help anybody, because that fear has now been instilled in the parent. That is now been echoed throughout the children. Then, as far as the mother knows, there's a gateway into the house for supernatural entities, of which it goes into the child's bedroom. So, from a sheerly ethical point of view, no one should ever have told the parents that. No. Even if we say that psychics and mediums are genuine, is that wise to tell the parent that and then go, "I'll see you later unless you pay me"?
Yeah, I'll leave you with that.
So I was invited. This is probably about 2011. So I was invited to this house, and when I was in this house, the child then told me a story. The child says, "Well, in the garden outside, we've got this." Again, they pointed to the front garden, and in the garden there's a tree, and on the tree there's a man who looks like a monkey, but he has red eyes, and he climbs the tree. He sometimes walks around, but then he's sometimes in my bedroom, and sometimes I find him in the bathroom. And it's like, while it may be that the parents have said one thing there's a belief system in there. The child is clearly having a vivid experience of something they could see, feel, touch, whatever it is they're doing. And it may well be that it's subjective. They are, you know what it's like when I walk down my corridor in here. I've got a trouser press at the end of this corridor. Gets me in the middle of the night because there's a towel over it. It looks like a person. Gets me every time. Every night it gets me, even though I know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So is the child seeing something that's given them pareidolia or the shape of epiphania every night? Very possibly. But the child vividly did say he looks like a monkey. He's got hairy skin. He's got hairy body. He's got red eyes. What is he doing? That characteristics of a dark shape that's a little bit shaggy with red eyes is also found throughout folklore. It's found throughout everything from like the Mothman prophecies to Bigfoot encounters to people who have encounters with fairies. That is a very distinct shape and a very distinct description. So does that match up with folklore? Quite possibly it does. But could we do anything different to any other investigator? No. All I did, I told the parents, says, well, whatever's going on here, it's settled, it's okay. All the portals are sealed, as there's no need to feel uncomfortable or feel worried at all now. Your child's okay. I literally asked the child, what would make you feel safe? And basically he says, as long as I can have my teddy with me at night, I will feel safe. I says, well, let's find a place where the teddy can always watch over the room. You can always feel safe. So you're putting in, sensible safeguards, because if it is in the child's mind, it's fine, because they are reinforcing the belief. So even if that's all it takes, if consciousness is indeed what we think it is, that somehow it interacts with the environment, the child then also has the belief that it has a sentinel that is going to watch over the room and keep them safe. So it's doubling down in every way, whether it be real, in the mind, or just in this child's imagination. It left that. And then I contacted the parents a week later. They hadn't heard another event. Child's safe to sleep in the bedroom. It's case done. Everyone's happy, including the parents, who now no longer worry that there's a portal in the child's bedroom. And sometimes you kind of have to play it like that. You just have to say, everything's okay, because someone has gone in there and gave them a story that there was a portal in the child's bedroom.
I mean, the portal thing's interesting because it reminds me of it's a good friend of mine, and she's asked me a few times to look into this, but she lives at the other end of the country, unfortunately. But she had a similar thing. She was noticing all manner of spirits coming through her house. She had an old soldier was one of them, an old lady, and she couldn't understand why. Why all these people were kind of appearing to her, not just her, the family as well. And a similar conclusion, the paranormal team went in eventually. This was about several years ago now. And they basically said, look, there is a portal or a gateway. Is this on your property? And it's allowing all manner of things through. And we found this when we interviewed William Graves in a property in Sheffield, the lady in the main window. He was told the same thing. Have you come across this before? Because it kind of makes a little bit of sense as to why I'm not saying this explains every haunting by any stretch, but some hauntings could be down to like these paranormal gateways that are allowing entry.
There is something to it, and if we suspend a position of disbelief that these things can happen, which is a kind of position I tend to put myself in, if we are to accept what the experiencer is saying, we have to, instead of shutting them down, allow them to share their experience as if it's a very honest experience. So sometimes you have to suspend disbelief instead of going, no, I don't believe you. Well, it might well be that they are having this experience. It could be psychological, it could be mental, it could be down to medication, we don't know. But we'll allow them to tell us the story. So with portals, it's interesting the portal story kind of aligns with another phenomenon that is like, have you heard of like the Tulpa egregore things? Where there is apparently some people can manifest figures. So I've heard doctors who have done experiments where there was one study I read, I think it was in Northampton, where one evening a doctor there said, hey, I'm going to project as part of my experiment a samurai set of armor here. I'm going to have an evening where all my faculty members come over for a drinks night, and then the next day he then asked them, hey, what do you think of the samurai armor in my corridor? And remarkably, several of them said they saw it, and even though he was the only one who was aware of it. Interesting psychological experiment. Are tulpas and portals thus the same phenomenon? Are we somehow consciously making something happen in our environment? If we go down the line that consciousness and our environment is somehow linked, as appears to be some of the case, with some of the data, certainly in regards to the UAP, whistleblowers talk about how somehow consciously we interact with the environment. May it be that a portal does exist and we create it, and thus that allows spirits or whatever to wander through. Therefore, is it possible that it could be shut down in the same way? Could someone just going in there and thinking that we've closed this actually could that alleviate the events that are happening? Possibly. But do you have to believe in it to be there in the first place?
Yeah. Very good point.
Because I go in there and I go, I don't believe there's a portal in here. I can't see one. I don't know what it's doing, but I believe you guys are having an experience. So what we can do, well, where do you think this is? We will go there and we will act and perform as if we're closing it down, as if we know what we're doing. Should that therefore reinforce in the claimant's mind that is what's needed to be
That's
done.
as good as, yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, just to circle back to folklore, and again, I mentioned this last week when we spoke, Christian, about the legends of Ptah, the ancient Egyptian creator god, who,
For sure.
it says that he literally thought the world into being. He was literally creating reality. But I mean, it's interesting that you say about, is it perception? Can somebody create this portal and can they shut it down with the same mechanism, essentially? And I think this is another area that you're interested in, Ouija boards. They're very similar. If you'll know better than me. I mean, I've used these on occasion, and I'm contemplating using one again, actually. But that's by the by. Essentially, though, you've got to open these things in a specific way. These communications, and you're specifically warned by people that say they're in the know that if things go bad, if you've got an entity that's not what they say they are, it's a nefarious entity, you've got to close that communication down very specifically. Otherwise, that entity is not going to leave. What's your experience with Ouija boards? Because if I'm correct, I mean, you have an interest in this. Is that correct, Christian?
Strictly speaking, no, I do not have an interest in Ouija boards. Because I'm very much, an evidence-based guy. I really strive to be.
Okay.
However, I do have a Ouija board bought by my good friend that sits under my coffee table in the living room. It doesn't work so well because it's hand-painted, and as such, any glass on it can get stuck in all the paint ripples. But it is beautiful. It's very nice. However, I do, of course. You have the idiomator effect, where you have, if people have their fingers on a glass or fingers on a planchette, there is the ability to influence, what's on the planchette or the glass on the table. And if there is an overriding feeling between 3 or 4 of you that's going towards a certain direction, it naturally will speed up and it will cause it to go to the letter. So if it's spelling out the name Peter, it's going to go P-E-T, and naturally everyone thinks, oh, Peter's next, and it spells out the rest of the word. And it speeds up. So, and of course, there's a particular episode of Penn and Teller where they go to a group who are very committed to Ouija boards, and unbeknownst to them, they turn the board 90 degrees, yet of course they're still moving the glass in the position that they thought the board was turned into, even though they're now blindfolded. So it showed that if spirit was actually present, they would know that the board is now turned.
Yeah.
There was very simple a way to...
But then you'll always have people, though, who'll say the spirit works through the individuals.
Yes.
So the spirit sees through us.
Yes.
There'll always be somebody who will say that. But, it's one of those highly debated subjects, isn't it, at the end of the day?
I think there's an interesting psychological aspect that can be done from it. Are you channeling your inner brain, what do they call it, the subconscious through this? Or spirit actually tapping into that? I mean... I say I don't do Ouija boards or any kind. I don't do such a thing, but there was an event that happened only a few months ago where I partaked in an event and I came away going, that was interesting because what happened, what I saw, I did not expect to see happen. And I was like, that makes me want to question more, but at the same time, I tend to go down a more research factual baseline. But what I saw made me start asking questions.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the psychological thing there, because to me, for example, like you say, for sake of argument, if we're saying that, the subconscious mind is guiding, the glass, the magnifying, whatever you want to call it, and it's spelling out certain names or instructions, then that in itself is almost like paranormal research in real time, because, why is the subconscious mind doing that? I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I don't know if you want to elaborate on what you saw or whether you want to keep it to yourself. But
okay,
I mean,
what did I see? The only reason I'm a bit cagey is I haven't asked the other people who were there at the time their permission to share what had happened. So, vaguely, I could say that there was a number of people gathered. Should we say 5 people? One of those was a doctor. He was watching. He was partaking. And on this table, a message came through of a person's name, and it was the first name was known to an individual who his hand was not on the glass, and it was not known to anybody else in the circle. So it was like, do you know someone? This glass moved to this character. Oh, okay. Well, actually, are you this person? And this thing slid down the table and went to yes, and then. Skeptically, everyone else in the room who was not touching the glass, myself included, the doctor over there says, well, if you are who you say you are, could you ask a question that this person who's not touching the glass would know? And it then spelt out a 5-digit sequence. It spelled out like, I don't know, it was 80237 or whatever. And it was asked, and then they asked the person who was not touching the glass, does that mean anything to you? And he goes, yes, that's the number of my Masonic order.
Wow.
Interesting.
And that person, it was their funeral that particular day. And they came to this table, allegedly, to say, thank you very much for supporting them. But the person who knew that was not touching the glass at all. But it spelled out this number, and that was something only that spirit, should we say, that person who's passed on, and this guy who was not touching the glass knew that was the only thing they knew that he wouldn't know. So none of us touched him. So that was, I came away from that going, what just happened?
Yeah.
Some crazy things
was the person who was involved, was he skeptical or was he...
Very. No, he was very skeptical. So he came away, we spent a good 2 or 3 hours after that just talking about that, and you could tell it profoundly affected him.
Yeah,
in a positive way, but at the same time he was like, I never would have thought of that. Well, why would he come through? I don't believe in that. Those kind of things. How does this happen? What's happening? And then, of course, all the questions of how does it happen? Could it happen? Is it RSPK?
Mm-hmm.
Is it? So therefore, he might well still be the agent influencing other people.
That was what I was going to say. That's what it makes me think straight away that, it's subconsciously, obviously, whether he wants to believe it or not, then maybe that's transferring to someone's mind. So I think it's a good example, this brief part of the conversation, actually, of where, we start talking about Ouija boards and we've kind of we're not really buying into it, but then you start going into the mechanics of them. And we're already talking about subconscious influence and, that kind of thing. So it just shows you how just researching this stuff leads you into loads of different avenues and things of that nature.
I think the positive thing is to have is always be open to discuss the question. It might be what you're looking at is fraud. It might well be what you're looking at is something that is concocted or believed. But also be willing to go where the facts lie and go, well, actually, we can answer the question by doing X, Y, and Z, and that's fair. And if everyone agrees that is the case, you've solved the mystery. But then some points are outliers. Go, well, what did we actually experience here? What's the answer? We're not quite sure, but also be able to be comfortable. But that's it. That's what it is. We're at a position where we don't know the answer.
There's nothing wrong with saying you don't know. People get a bit, I don't want to be able to turn around and say I don't know. Well, we don't know everything. That's the problem.
I mean, Steve, you've probably come across more people than I have.
I've seen it all.
But also those people who they've got an experience. It could be they saw a UFO in 1974, and it haunts them to the point they do not know the answer, and they will come to you at every conference, every event, going, "Tell me what I saw," and I don't know the answer. I can't tell.
Yeah, I mean. Really, I mean, like my 42 years now into the subject.
For sure.
And really, the biggest events only started happening for me 2013 onwards. And that was when we got into some very hefty experiments and stuff. And boy, did I see some crazy stuff. And I didn't sleep for a while just because I just couldn't stop my brain going over the damn thing over and over and over. What did I just see? What have I just, and it is hard. It's difficult because, you get a mindset thinking, I want the readies. I want it to happen. Show me the goods. And most times, okay, well, you might get some little things and you think, okay, that's interesting. And you're happy at that. But then suddenly one day it goes boom and something so significant happens. It does change your life. And now all of a sudden you end up with this epiphany of anything could happen. Yeah. Anything could happen. I will accept anything after seeing and experiencing what I've had. So I will never rule out anybody's, what they might say they've seen.
I mean, on that note, I've ASAP. I've got on a yearly basis. We talk to Keith Linder. So
Keith.
Keith.
Yeah, he's probably told you about the case we did then.
he does, and actually, what he said to me was that when he spoke to you, he thought that you and your partner were the first people who took him serious.
We did. Well, yeah, I mean, we had to be very. I mean, we don't just go and jump on a plane and travel to another country to do an investigation on a whim.
Yeah,
Keith had to go through a process of questions, and there were gaps, sometimes quite long gaps between these because a long enough gap for him to forget what we asked. So we're measuring his intent and measuring all sorts of different things, his feedback, just to see about the credibility of it. And it's awarded certain points. We have a pointing system, and it got to after a while. It was like, well, okay, well, the only real is we got to go. And not only did we go once, we went twice.
that's right. Yeah,
And I took at the time the president of the Scottish Society of Psychical Research with me and witnessed. It was crazy. Of course, I took a catalyst with me, and the catalyst is somebody who is supercharged. So basically, it's like you break if you suspect a haunted building and you bring this catalyst in, it's like it becomes supercharged a location, on steroids. So it's all sorts of things sort of vamp up.
yeah.
So I had the opportunity of taking the catalyst with me, which worked, absolutely worked. Of course, poor Keith. But he was going through it.
Yeah.
But he had to move eventually because of it all. But there was some crazy, crazy stuff that
He said
happened.
he still owes you a Seattle salmon, apparently.
Yeah.
He said he was. Last time I spoke to him, he said he was trying to cook you, or planned to go out to cook you a salmon, but the cooker stopped working.
That's right. The cooker, it just phantomly stopped. So we ended up, I think, we having pizza or something.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, and the next time you came over, you guys had to have a meal out because it blew up or it didn't work or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know what? We were thorough as we possibly could be. I mean, we were doing 19-hour shifts, and it was just absolutely constant. But the amount of data and the things that we gathered whilst we were there was incredible. Incredible.
I can imagine.
Of course, he was witnessing it himself and recording things himself as well. As we were doing our investigation, he was doing his.
Is that not the case you're referring to? Is that just a phenomenal case? I mean, just keeping track of time, I want to just move on to something, Keith, that you mentioned earlier on about catalysts. And Steve, you mentioned this as well just a moment ago. What are your views on psychics and mediums, particularly those that are actually showmen or showwomen? There's the old things about there's earpieces, there's research carried out. Have you actually come across, though, because I know a couple of psychics that they don't tend to fall into those traps. You can't tend to trip them up like that. And one particularly, my wife went to see, and he told us stuff that there's just no way on earth he would know. It shocked us both. I was a complete skeptic before this, and after this, I've spoken to him several times. But the point I'm getting at, people assume they're in contact with spirits, but are we again looking at some kind of form of telepathy or being able to read minds, subconscious gives almost? Have you come across that in your research?
Well, again, think about that. See, the concept of reading minds also, or telepathy or communication between two individuals, is also found in the UAP phenomenon too. Apparently these beings have the ability to read their mind. The trickster character also has the ability to read their mind. And you find within folklore there's certain characters. We could even say Santa reads your mind. We could say that the Krampus reads it. They have taken the places of the gods who would read our mind and our intent. And then you have to wonder, were they the gods? Anyway, but perhaps I'm chasing away from myself. So I do wonder how much that is interrelated with each other. In regards to mediums, I think, personally, I struggle with what their abilities are. And I've come across people who also, as mediums, are struggling what their ability is. Some mediums will say they're getting bothered 24 hours a day by spirits who want them to talk to other people or to give them messages. There's a guy who recently joined ASAP, and I'll say his name's Malcolm. He tells me that he's not psychic. He's very much a science-oriented kind of guy, really interested in the mechanics of people who say that they're psychic. His wife, he says he's obviously been married for 49 years, is a medium, is a psychic. He says, I struggle with the fact that she can see things and I can't. And I don't disbelieve her because I've known her all my life for 50 years plus. I've been married for 49. Why would she lie now? And it still continues today. But I do not see what it is that she sees. And I think she struggles to see things. that are around her. There's people who says they come in the house, they sit on the sofa. She says there's people who come to the side of the bed at night and they wake her up. She's out shopping and someone will start speaking to her, but I can't see them. I don't disbelieve my wife, but what are they seeing? What's different here? So when I hear someone's experience like that, I am profoundly interested to see what their partner, in this case, is experiencing. So for a while, I attended a physical mediumship circle in Derby. I was there for about 9 months. While I was in that particular circle, how I got invited is an even more bizarre series of events, but we might not have to go to here. But when I was there, I saw, felt, and experienced things that were really bizarre and interesting.
Yeah.
But what was more interesting, as an observer who's a bit more grounded than most people, there was the medium who was the gentleman who was leading this. He was an engineer for Rolls-Royce. That was his job. He's a very science-driven individual. His bookcase is full of books of cosmos. He's very much Carl Sagan orientated, very much a very pragmatic guy. But he's a medium. And I found that was a really interesting thought. You know, and when I got there, everyone's wearing black, no one's wearing metal. And he gave us the kind of the spiel of how the night goes, what happens. And his claim, and I say a claim because I don't know for sure, he says that when he goes into trance and he's in his cabinet, his grandfather, who is his filter, he says that his grandfather tells him that on the other side there are active spiritual scientists on the other side who are endeavouring to find ways to communicate with different people here on the earth.
Yeah.
And I've heard that described a few times.
Team. Yeah.
Yeah, and who those characters are pop up in different narratives. They popped it with Raldiv. They've popped up with another group that I'm aware of, the Skull Experiments. They pop up again in this guy's experiments. Yeah. So that, and it appears that on the other side there is potentially an active research project of spirits who are trying to communicate with us.
Does seem to be. But we've got to be careful there, and that's the problem, isn't it?
That's where. And I was just like, I'm not sure I'm buying this.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can we reinforce this room then? So we got a lux meter in this room to measure light, even though the room's in darkness. Oh, we got mini disc recorders going. We have the red light to dip it down, so the ability to turn it up. Sorry, so we had light in this room. I'm aware of all the other people in the room. I can see them and I can feel them. I know it's a very small group. There's only 5 of us there. 4 are sat around this table with a medium in a cabinet. And so while in this particular scenario, there was messages coming through when he was channeling spirit. And he was saying that the spirits on the other side play with time and perception because they do not understand how we see it. And I can firmly say, very, very honestly, that I'm sat here on a particular day, and I can see they call it a trumpet. It's like a wooden cone, basically. It's on the center of this table, and at the, should we say, the northeast, south, and west of it, and the top and the bottom, he's got these little squares of glow-in-the-dark stickers, basically. So you can see the shape of this. I held it 20, 30 times. I'm fully aware this is about the size of like a tall ice cream cone, but it's made of wood, almost lollipop stick-like strips of wood, and he had 2 metal ones as well. I'm the very first time I go in there, and the medium says that through this spirit channel, he says, I'm going to be doing some experiments in dilation. You might see things where the room would move a little bit, but what it is, it's something moving between you and the object. And I was looking at this trumpet on the table, and I saw it bend. I can describe it. It just looked like it bent downwards. And I'm just like, and I'm moving my head. I've got no idea what I'm looking at. And I put this on the table. I know how hard this is. I know it's real. I put it on the table, but I saw the top of this cone with the 3 points that I could see from my perspective move. And I'm just like, what is going on?
Wow, it's absolutely crazy stuff. Absolutely crazy stuff. I mean, again, conscious of time, I kind of want to drift into UFO territory and what your thoughts are on UFO disclosure and things how we're standing right now.
Okay.
But just sticking with the, with the seances and that type of environments with mediums and things like that, it's something I'm looking into right now. Is potential connections between, so-called ectoplasm, which often, certainly back in the day, and I know this has
Oh man,
been discounted a lot, so I'm not saying I believe in this, but
I've
also
got a
like
story for you.
angel hair and stuff with UFOs. I was listening to someone give a little talk of the day saying, is there a connection between the two? That there's been a paranormal event and this is the result of it. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. And then off the back of that, what are your thoughts on UFO disclosure and where we're at right now?
Well, oddly enough, so I don't know. I wrote an article about angel hair, but it's generally taken from the sources that already exist.
Yeah.
And I'm also aware that it comes in a variety of different forms. There are the kind of really fine hairs. There's ones that are almost like a metallic substance, and there are ones that are like a gel substance that appears that when you touch them, they almost disintegrate and disappears.
Yeah.
And I think there's been attempts to secure them and capture them, but it appears that every time you touch it, they just dissipate. So we don't really know what they are. They could be chaff. They could be, fibers that come off planes or whatever that have come down. I'm not sure. But in regards to ectoplasm, I really, cheesecloth. My brain says cheesecloth. You guys are making it up.
Yeah.
I understand why they might have done that for theatrical effect to get punters to come each and every week as a promotion tool to earn money. I get that it's a parlor trick. I understand why people would do it, but there was at this physical mediumship seance, right? There's me and my friend Alan. We're the only two guests. The other two are sick, so it's just us two and the medium. And so we're all holding hands. I've got this guy's hand here, the medium. I'm holding Alan's hand here, and I can see in the really dim light when we've all held hands. And I can describe to you what it felt like. So none of us wore shoes, right? We've just got bare socks on. Dark room, a table in front of us, and I can only describe what felt like shaving foam move over my feet.
Okay.
And I don't even know how to. That's what it was. That kind of consistency of moistness that had a warmth to it, and it kind of enveloped my left foot. And it felt in my mind's eye. I couldn't see it. It felt like it kind of went under the table, went wrapped over my feet, and it had a smell that kind of smelt like, I guess the word is sulfur, but it's not sulfur because sulfur doesn't have a smell. It's that kind of not quite an egg smell, but it's an off scent, right? And I'm aware that the connotations are with UAP with that and alien beings and skin foliage and stuff. And then I felt this also retract. I felt it wrap around my foot, and I was terrified to move my foot. In my brain, I'm going, just move it, move your foot. It's going to be fine. You know what it is. But I have been told repeatedly by the medium, do not move. Whatever you do not move, because that apparently can cause some kind of effect to him or the ghost, whatever. And I'm like, okay. So I choose to follow the rules. I shouldn't have followed the rules because I should have moved my foot. But I felt this retract off my foot back towards the medium. And again, and the smell dissipated. So I have zero faith in ectoplasm. I believe it's cheesecloth. But my experiences of that particular time, it's my one and only time, that was some kind of bizarre substance. But again, in my head, I think I can see it has like an orangey kind of color to it, because I was looking down, trying to work out what this was, and I don't know. I think it had a consistency of like shaving foam, really that wetness that then it dissipated. My sock wasn't wet afterwards because I checked. I've got no idea what that was, but what ectoplasm is, I've no idea. But could it be the same stuff as angel hair? I don't know. Is that why it dissipates? Is that what happens? I don't know.
It's interesting.
It's got bioplasmics, and these are different form of bioplasmics, which is it'll be things like manifestations of blood plasma, and things like that, which is seemingly falls into a different category, but it's a forming nonetheless. Usually sometimes poltergeists associated because they're associated with liquid formings, water, tar, blood in some cases.
Yes.
So these bioplasmics, which are, because it's biological, blood is biological, blood plasma, which in the Jackie Hernandez case, again is a bio So you think to yourself, okay, so, but I agree with you, Christian, when it comes to, I think most of the ectoplasm stuff is cheesecloth. I've never seen any significant evidence to change my mind, though that I am aware bioplasmics do happen through apportation phenomena. But when you see the old photographs and it's
Yeah,
clearly a piece of cloth coming out the mouth
for sure.
or a fake hand coming out, next to them somewhere.
Yeah,
It's just not good enough here.
no. And then, but then so for a while I was skeptically interested, so I went along to an SNU church. Nottingham has Cannon Circus, which was one of the oldest SNU churches in the country. So besides having their public come along and have a go at mediumship, get some readings off people, there's a guest like once a week kind of thing who would give a talk and a reading kind of thing. They actually have a mediumship development class there. Not that I ever attended, I generally didn't. But so I asked the question about physical mediumship because, of course, this is now what's going on in my other life of dabbling with this stuff. And the guy says the SNU doesn't condone or acknowledge that physical mediumship exists or has ever existed. We've never done it. But then says to me in a different conversation, well, it does still happen, but it's done privately because the danger to the medium is too significant.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Nottingham is there. I mean, I've investigated in Nottingham a few times. Of course, my experience at Newstead Abbey was very interesting, around the cloisters. That is very, very potent there. I did an investigation for an elderly couple in a bungalow, which were having some very profound phenomena taking place there. And also, I did an investigation in Sherwood Forest.
Yeah.
And there was something... Because obviously, when you've got a night vision camera, I mean, we're going back some years now, because I really don't like night vision cameras. The only time I use it, if I can't see, it's as simple as that. But there was something luminous, like a figure, popping its head out from a tree, and it must have been 40, 50 foot away.
Right.
I could clearly see it on camera, but I'm thinking, when we infrared, you'll know, infrared's not going to reach that far from a little camera. So it must have been giving off something for it to be recorded and seen. It was a bit strange.
Yeah.
Every time I've been there, there seems to be quite a stronghold of paranormal things going on in that location in Nottingham.
Yeah.
Though that people do see UFOs, but it's always been paranormal in my experiences in Nottingham.
Yeah, for sure. There's I think I've got all the paranormal books. I think I've contributed to half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
But no, it's certainly a strange place. Everything from the Black Dog of Beckingham, that kind of stuff. The older Black Dog here.
It's a very, very old phenomenon, isn't it? Really, that is.
I mean, Sherwood Forest as well. It must be rife with it, because if you think back in the day, Sherwood Forest wasn't confined to where it is now. It's just from right at the top of England right down to the bottom. What I find equally fascinating there, and again, it's a slightly off topic, is you mentioned Robin Hood briefly. I mean, I don't know if you've done any research into this, but that's full of allegorical stuff. It's full of hidden messages, similar to the Parsifal things of the Grail mysteries and things like that.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me wonder, is there something in certainly parts of Sherwood Forest that these secret societies who are doing those rituals?
I tell you what, that there's even 2 weeks ago, there's actually a new piece of Robin Hood kind of literature that's been found.
Right.
Never known about in history. And 2 weeks ago, it was a book from the 1700s, and in it contains a folded piece of paper that's from even older, and that fell out on literally. Because I don't know how well you've ever followed the Robin Hood topic. No. It's not something I've ever really delved into deeply. Where there's lots of bards, there's lots of bards' tales, as it were, from certainly the medieval times. And then from around the 1700s, it tends to get a bit more similar to the story that we're a bit more familiar with, very romantical and very fantastical. Like King Arthur, there's a few weird elements get added, supernatural stuff gets added. But this particular case... So what fell out of it? It's the first mention of Marion and Robin being together, and it's from the 1536. I think there's letters from. But it's actually it was found only 2 weeks ago in a book from the 1700s.
How did they miss that? Blimey.
I know, yeah. So Tony Rotherham is a guy you should definitely talk to, because he is a guy who overflows both of those things. Whether he's like a living historian.
Tony Rotherham, I've heard of Tony Rotherham. Yeah,
lovely guy, really is. So he was he was in Robin of Sherwood. He's a swashbuckler, a reenactor. He's a kind of living storyteller. So he does like film choreography for movies and stuff. So a definitely interesting guy to talk to. But he literally is the eminent guy when it comes to Robin Hood legends. He's the collator and the guy
to go to.
He is.
What the
really
connotations of that discovery, Christian, if any? I mean, I know it's only happened 2 weeks ago, because Robin Hood essentially has got, like fertility allegories intertwined into it. But there are people who say, well, this guy could have actually existed. Same with King Arthur, I mean, like Graham Phillips has spent years researching the realities of King Arthur, and he'll probably get there too. What are your thoughts on, what are your thoughts on, did Robin Hood exist, I suppose, but also, are there any, consequences of this discovery? Because I didn't know about this. It's really brilliant.
The only reason I know about this, I literally was walking through the area of Nottingham called Sherwood, and just happened to bump into him. And when you've got a guy who's full of enthusiasm in front of you, and he's bubbly, he's talking and talking, he's like, I've just found this, and this, he sent me pictures of this, and this. So I'm going there right now to go and see it myself. It was that kind of full of enthusiasm. Yeah. It literally, whatever it is that they found, from what it is that he had been communicated to last time I spoke to him.
It's very significant. Yeah.
He was just like, it's like my world is going to change kind of thing, story time.
Yeah.
And he said that basically it's the first mention of them being together for the first time.
That's a massive thing, though.
And it's 200 years earlier than they ever thought it was. So he was just like, oh my God.
Is that mentioned factual then, or is it mentioned as in a tale? Or do we not know yet?
It's in a tale, really. It's in the Bard tales, as it were. So they basically are a series of stories that feature the characters who make up the mythos, as it were. Because you've got characters like Will Scarlet, the Sheriff of Nottingham, Guy of Gisborne. They are sort of an ensemble of characters. So these stories feature those in various tellings and stories. And like you see, with every Hollywood retake, there's a new version or a new take on it. Oh, we saw that one quite recently from Guy Ritchie that's set like in the modern day.
Yeah.
I think there's like a new one with like, who was it?
There's been one showing recently with Sean Bean in it.
That's the right. Yes.
That's it. Robin, it's just called Robin Hood 2025, isn't it?
Right. There's Hugh Jackman who's now playing him in the new Hollywood adaptation or whatever.
Yes,
that's big business.
The story will never end.
Yeah, it's funny how you say how it keeps like kind of evolving and being retold and retold.
You see characters get added to the story. So in Robin of Sherwood back in the 1980s, they had Michael Praed playing Robin Hood. It was the first time of the introduction of the Muslim character, who had a variety of different names.
Right.
So that was the first time he's been added to the mythos. And then now he's become a consistent character, like Morgan Freeman played him. It's the kind of character who somehow came back with him from the Crusades, and he appears to be fighting for good with him.
There's a certain amount of not factual, but potential factual there, because they will have had some crossover. They took a lot of those Muslim and Eastern influences, didn't they? The Templars, for example.
Yeah. So it is weaving new narratives all the time. So where the real story lies is probably lost, really. I can imagine that. I mean, the concept really that he steals from the rich to give to the poor is as a beautiful little allegory that can be said in a sentence. But it's really about the taxation of the time. that the people of the city of Nottingham and the surrounding areas were not allowed to hunt their own food. So as such, they were starving.
Yeah.
And that's really what the story where he goes and hunts the deer, then goes into Nottingham Castle, throws the deer down in front of King John, saying, "This is the problem. We're not allowed to hunt. Here I am." Rah, 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 rah. And his old swashbuckling scene with Errol Flynn, is wonderful because of that. That is what his campaign really is against, the fact that people can't hunt and grow food for themselves on the king's land, and he owns everything, and everyone's starving. But I tell you an interesting fact. So Nottingham, until about 2018, used Robin Hood and all their icons, and they actually stopped doing that. So Nottingham City Council doesn't use Robin Hood anymore. The city of Nottingham doesn't use it, and there's no amusement, there's no celebration, there's no venues of Robin Hood in Nottingham anymore at all. Not one.
Right.
Blimey. Even Dick Turpin gets something.
He does, yeah. That's
Why is that? Because even in Doncaster, I mean, the airport was called Robin Hood Airport, and we were all like, "Why?" It's Nottingham, but they said, "Well, he spent some time up here, apparently." So, but why is that though? Because you think that
okay. So the council refuses to use Robin Hood now because, of course, it romanticizes and promotes the idea that you shouldn't pay your taxes.
Oh,
and that is the actual reason.
Ridiculous.
Truly is the reason.
That's paranoia for you, isn't it?
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is absolutely bizarre, really.
Yes,
because if anything, it's a morality tale of like, don't let somebody own too much because at the expense of everybody else, as you just said.
Well, yeah.
So the city council and associated businesses did not promote Robin Hood because, of course, it's the idea that you're not going to pay your taxes.
That's absolutely insane.
So they changed it to a big N, basically, after that.
I feel sorry for the guys out there. His real name is Robin Hood, because I know a Mark Hood. You know, he.
Well, they think also that he has that the Hood actually is again, it's an allegory. The fact that he was a cloaked figure. He could have been part of a monastic order. He could have been a part of an order that basically was cast out by royalty and was basically laying in the woods. That's why he has merry men who also wear hoods as well. Also, a bit like the Dick Turpin story, you have people who also were playing the same character, in various different places, because of his fame at the time. So there literally could have been many other versions of him. Yeah. People playing him.
No wonder he was so legendary.
Yeah, he's getting around with it.
The thing with the name is interesting because, again, the King Arthur, there's some research that suggests Arthur literally means king. Do you know what I mean? It's a centre of royalty. So it's not actually a name, it's a title. And the same with Christ. Technically, it should be Jesus the Christ, the King. All these sort of examples, like you say, so Robin Hood, that makes a certain amount of sense. So that could be a reference.
It's fascinating. But Nottingham certainly is a significant location in the UK. For all sorts of strange things which have been reported over the years.
Oh man! So one thing I did at the beginning of last year, I did a series called Phenomenal Nottinghamshire, which is like a 12-part podcast. 12-part. You come on my website and also see it. So it was deliberately covering weird stories, of strange accounts that were local that are not in the public books. So I went through all the Nottingham ghost books and legend books and myths books, and there's loads of them. And I deliberately found. And they are 6 to 10 minutes a piece, so bite-sized podcasts that tell a story, usually two stories per episode, of a variety of different cases across Nottingham that are not found in those books. Accounts of things like Men in Black, accounts of things like vampires found in the 1800s.
Yeah, cryptids. Cryptids as well, yeah.
Is there a cryptid here? No, apart from cats found, and a big dog found in the north of Nottinghamshire. Cryptids, I suppose. No, there's no cryptids as such. Spring-heeled Jack finds a bit of a legend here.
Yeah, Spring-heeled Jack. Yeah,
there's more sightings of Spring-heeled Jack than you think, and they carry on. I mean, I've researched Spring-heeled Jack quite a bit, actually, and there was even a sighting in Sheffield as far ahead as 1977. Now, that's obviously not verified. It's just a type of thing.
Is this the lady who looks out of her kitchen window and he's there in a tree?
No, this is somebody, it's in the mid-70s, I know that, so it might be the same time, and I know, but it's a guy who said he was walking on from the pub, he's followed, and he indeed gets home, and he just sees this figure leap over the houses exactly as he was reported to have done, because it started around the 1830s, didn't it, Spring-heeled Jack, but there were still sporadic sightings right the way into the early 1900s, but yeah, again, it's an interesting thing about legends can take on a life of their own almost,
So the story, actually, the Nottingham Spring-heeled Jack is different. As in, so it's located in a village called Limby, which is in the northeast of Nottingham, and it's one of those towns that it's in the Doomsday Book. It's a very, very small village. I think there's 200 people live in this village, and it's a through road between Nottingham, Papplewick, Worksop, and the reporting of Spring-heeled Jack here is different because it doesn't say that it's Spring-heeled Jack himself, but it says it's the ghost of Spring-heeled Jack. So what they are seeing is not him, but something that has the same attributes. And what they are saying, that on Quarry Lane, it was a bunch of miners coming back from the quarry. They were going home after work. It's heavy snow, and they see a figure who's bounding left to right, steps 20 feet apart, and he's bounding left to right across a field. And he's going basically towards Weir Mill, which is a site of scientific interest. It's where Sophia Hyatt, the one she was the deaf girl who was an admirer of Lord Byron, And
Right.
so
it's
part of the ghost story. She has her own ghost stories. She's the white lady in New Abbey. So where she lived is Weir Mill, and that's just outside Limby. Limby basically borders the grounds of Weir Mill. So this figure is seen bounding towards this guy's house, and is seen by something like 20 miners. And they go into the field and they measure it. It's 20 feet apart, these steps are. But they mention that it's a ghost of Springfield Jack. And there's inside the town, there's a parish council map from like early 1900s. And also is mentioned on there as well that it's the ghost of Springfield Jack.
Wow.
Well, that's going to be tricky then, isn't it, working out which one's which?
Yeah.
Is it or is it the apparition of Springfield Jack?
Interesting.
They're looking at the attributes and are going, oh, it has the same attributes as this guy who had Springfield boots.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it was
could be a tulpa, you know. I mean, if people believe in something strong enough, it could birth something. There's some evidence to support those things could happen.
Do you think? I mean, I've often thought it's most likely going to be an acrobat from like the with like the Chinese circuses or whatever.
Passing circus,
possibly. It's really possible. It's a fascinating subject. It's something we could spend an entire episode on.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, we should really ask you, because we mentioned it, because I know you've got an interest in UFOs, just like me and Steve. I probably know the answer you're going to give before I ask this. What about UFO Disclosure, Kristin? Are we going to see it this year? Is it a smokescreen? Why are they holding on to this information? What do you think?
Well, I guess one distinct difference between disclosure in the US and disclosure in the UK, there is an entirely different governmental structure behind it. In the US, clearly you have them. The way that they've done it is really quite smart. The first identification was, we have found some training manuals that feature mentions and video footage of UAP. And they've then gone, well, we can put these in the public sphere because they are just training documents. And they've used them to say, well, for pilot safety, clearly these things are real and you know they are real. And that's how they managed to get the topic, up to Congress level, saying these pilots need protection for their airline safety. I know that because of that, they were then able to admit that UAP exists and then move down the line of going, well, if they admit, what else exists? What do you have? Yeah. So they've been very smart about how they've done that, actually. Yeah. Very commendable about how they've managed to get that to where they've got it today.
Squeeze it out of them.
Because it's been done clearly in steps to get to the point where they're discussing it.
Well, they're waiting on their own information, so that because they pretend they have a habit of putting their own foot in the mouths, So once you get some of the stuff, then you go back at them again. You see, so.
But so in the UK, the UK government is very clear about our position, as that there's been no interest and no reports for more than 50 years. Last 2009 when the desk shut down, they and there's been. I think the line is quite interesting. Is it mentions that they're not adversarial.
Right.
But it's not saying that these don't exist, but they're not adversarial to us, and thus they are not of any significant defence threat to us. Yeah. So we're not going to investigate them.
I think the UK's just signed off to the US, to be honest, to deal with everything now. Because with the UK, there are people that go all over regarding big things, discussions regarding the subject, and the UK are involved, but not the UK here. They go over there, so it's like they handed the reins to them for dealing with more sort of those, because they have obviously the MOD shut down, said that they were being transparent, released all the material, all the reports. No, they didn't. There's 9 of mine they kept. So I know they're lying because they never released mine, because every time they came out and said we've released them, I was going through them all looking for mine. So they certainly sat on some, and not to be released, and those were ones which involved police officers and things that I was involved in. But it was like we tried to make ourselves look like they're transparent. Here's everything, we've closed it, we're not interested in it anymore. But I think really it was just a plan to just hand over to the US for them dealing with a lot of stuff, to be honest with you.
I think you and I spoke the other day, Marcus, about in perhaps places like Australia where there is vast deserts where we might have just outsourced it just across the road, across the pond to our friends. You go and play with it. The Five Eyes network clearly talk to each other. They clearly are in cahoots on certain stuff, and maybe an advanced aerial tech is one of them. But would we see disclosure? So I actually penned an article today for Haunted magazine, and it discusses the point that this year, of course, we have Disclosure Day, the movie coming out. And of course, there is the long-term conspiracy. That is, we've had a lot of friendly alien movies from E.T., Starman, almost like soft disclosure, they would say, through popular media, being funded by governments or by agencies that want disclosure to happen, and thus are making us feel very comfortable about it. And the article for me was actually about the 30th anniversary of Independence Day, which of course is happening in June, 1996.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Disclosure Day, of course, comes out in June, and oddly enough, it uses the same font as Independence Day.
No, it does actually. Yeah, well,
it does. When the letters turn around for Disclosure now, I went, that's the same letter as Independence Day.
Yeah, well, I mean, D-Day, referencing D-Day, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But you are right. But I think with the new Spielberg film, I think it's going to be more heavily involved in regarding how the phenomena utilizes consciousness.
Yes.
It's going to get into that sort of aspects. Really.
Yes. Well, what happens, of course, there's this populism, there's this cultural zeitgeist that happens, certainly after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and after E.T., there's this kind of like, there's an upswell about that. It's interesting that Spielberg does still lead that charge, because there is the mass follow him, the media follows his very work. So this could be another seminal work where we see that change again, like we saw with Close Encounters. This Disclosure Day, the movie, shall we say, could push the cultural zeitgeist around a bit to allow the topic to populate further. We keep hearing stories of like 2027, don't we?
Yes.
What they are, we don't know. Is that when they arrive? Is that when we admit them? Who knows?
It's very secretive.
I mean, entertainment pushes it forward.
Yeah,
if more people are speaking about this, if more people are just entertained about it, then it's a possibility in their minds, and then subconsciously that rolls out. So, but Christian, we're over the 90-minute mark. We're going to have to wrap this up, I'm afraid. But it's been absolutely.
We don't have to wrap it up. We can continue on. It's fine.
No, I mean, it's been brilliant speaking with you, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on and speak again. But before we let you go, my friend, what have you got coming up? Any projects? Any appearances? The floor's yours, my friend. Okay,
have I got anything coming up right now? So actually, a few months ago, I became free from my workplace. We came to an agreement where I left my workplace, so I currently have a lot of free time. So I've been able to dedicate a lot of my more recent times to ASAP, which is the Association of the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, of which I manage the media and the publication side of that. So that's taken up a lot of my work. The ASAP webinars are doing amazingly well. They now go out to the public as Seriously Strange episodes on YouTube and Spotify. We recently got an award from Spotify that we are in the top 15% of podcasts of.
Right.
This was amazing. I did not think we ever got anywhere near that. But yeah, we're in the top 15% of podcasts on Spotify for our content. We've got the magazine for Seriously Strange as well, members can get hold of. So that's been taking up my most recent time. What I want to do this year, I want to be able to speak to you, Steve. You've ticked a box on my list.
All right, absolutely, yeah, sure. I mean, we can just get in contact. I'm always happy to talk. Yeah.
Coast to coast next, anyway.
yeah, that's interesting. You can see if you can stay up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when you want to do it. That's the only downfall.
So yeah, I really want to get into taking the ASAP events on the road a bit. They only do a conference once a year. I'm very conscious of the fact that 10-15 years ago, and as I was writing this haunted article, right, I discovered that a local East Midlands company would sell out a school on a 3-month basis of purely UFO talks. And I'm like, so what happened to that audience? Where did they go? So I want to start holding quarterly events, basically, that are a cross between talking about the paranormal, talking about ufology, whether it be I hold a conference centre, whether I take out a pub, and just start getting people talking again in a positive way.
Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I just basically
so it works.
Having it run under an ASAP banner is quite useful to give it that status. But actually, just to kind of get people out and about, start talking about it again, whether it be that I connect with the skeptics in the pub, is what I'd like to do.
They do meetings where they have people come on and do presentations, don't they? Because I know that they've reached out to me a few times, but it's always very difficult with all filming projects and things I'm involved in. But I think they do that, don't they? They do the sort of presentations, electronic ones, over the internet. Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to get presentations back in the public space so people can come out, have a night out, spend a £5. You listen to a presentation, you listen to a couple of talks, meet some people, you socialise. It's not going to break the bank, and actually, it's good for everyone to keep the topic alive.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
keep a lookout
great
for
idea.
those. Look, Christian, thank you very much for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant
thank
speaking
you.
with you. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank
No,
you.
thanks, Steve. Thanks, Marcus. Appreciate that.
Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure that you check out the Anomaly Project Podcast.com. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments and make sure you follow us on social media. Until next time, goodbye and take care.